and saints, and got into a whole, and they were very representational, figurative. At Skowhegan, I painted landscape and the figure. That was what we did in those days. Now it's everything with names I can't even pronounce. So I just continued painting, and I was around painters, and I went to the Figurative Artists Alliance once with Alice Neal. Paul Georges was teacher at Skowhegan. Anyway, I started painting saints from holy carts that I had amassed in my travels to Latin America and elsewhere. I basically was painting things that I'd collected in my travels, but I traveled enormously from high school into my early years and continued to show all over the world in various capacities, everywhere from India to Haiti to Norway to, I don't know, you name it. Okay. So the same things, suddenly a lot of people were doing saints, and I was asked to be in shows. I was in a show called Stigmata, Resurrection. We had to take classes in churches to be in some of these things. I did a whole thing on Revelations, the book of Revelations, wing. Anyway, it was very interesting and consuming. And I was in a show at NYU at the Gray Gallery called Precious that Tom Sokolowski put together. And my painting was put on the cover of the Times art section on Easter Sunday. And I was above Joan Collins and Dynasty. Felt very famous for 5 minutes. Anyway, I've known her since, and she owns some of my work. And her son Sasha is a good friend of mine. And I got pieces of shrouds from St. Martin de Porres, who I painted. I actually went to the McDowell colony and to a few others and painted saints there and had out-of-body experiences and all kinds of interesting things associated with doing it. But anyway, there was a lot of publicity about this, and I continued that for a while, and then I started leaving the figure out and I always put animals behind them. That's where my rabbits have come from. These things all started with the saints.
Your work nowadays, we think of it as being these images that are collections of butterflies or birds or rabbits. In your life, you seem to be someone who likes to collect numbers of things. If someone were to tour around your studio, you may have 70 or 80 plants in one corner.
2,000 feet of plants.
Right. Another space, there may be a dozen harps or 20 top hats. Is there something about collections of things that gives you peace or inspiration or?
Well, they all feed my work. And I love going to flea markets. I've been using antique frames forever, since my first head shows or big show of my saints at DCU, Maryland Zeitlin curated it, and I had to frame all the paintings. I couldn't afford contemporary frames, so I started, looking at flea markets for 19th century frames, and then that became a big part of the whole thing, this gathering of stuff that inspires me. The top hats I show with the Lincoln paintings. I'm doing more and more installation shows. His wallpapers and fabrics that I do, that I save old furniture. I love sort of the time travel aspect of all of this. The armory is probably my greatest achievement in putting that into a whole building of using these things that I find, they just grab me, and even if I don't like them, like I hated candlesticks. Now, like I have hundreds of them on a table, in a room filled with antiques that I save and do things to. I don't know. I think a lot of artists have been collectors. Certainly Warhol never stopped for a minute. I don't think it just comes with the turf. There's something about making art and collecting things. I mean, so many artists have been huge collectors, and Gilbert and George collect. I forget what it is. Something. Mapplethorpe was a fanatic collector. It's just part of the obsession of going about life. I need to have a certain amount of living things around me when I paint. My birds are highly intelligent, and I actually ask their opinion. And plants. It's essential for me to have a garden. It's like the urban jungle. People say, why do you paint this stuff in New York? And, it's like, why would Rousseau paint tigers in Paris? I mean, why not? What's the difference? Anyway, it comes from within. It comes from other realms. I see it in my visions and dreams and meditations. And it's, I have to have this to survive in this jungle. That's the rest of it.
So your studio is 30,000 square feet. I know that you've had to move several times because of...
I've moved 7 times in 20 years.
Right.
That's just part of it.
But it's a large space. A lot of it is used for display and things. But your working space is probably only... 1,500, 2,000 square feet of that?
That's my working space, but I'm doing light boxes. I just did 50 drawings on big plexiglass. We've set up other studio activities. We have a packing and shipping thing and a whole nother thing downstairs. We have about 30,000 square feet, and then there's this drying component to what I do. I paint wet into wet and heavy oil often, so things have to be not damaged, hopefully, by hanging them. And then we have a photography area. It's all, and then we have shows that are picked out, and it's a lot of activity. We don't really not use any of the space at all. I don't think there's any amount of space I couldn't fill up. My armory's 150,000 square feet. And I just bought a castle that's 68,000 square feet, and I'm already out of wall space.
Oh my gosh! I have 2 questions. One, what is a day in the life? And 2, what is your working environment when you're painting? I mean, is there music? Is it just the sound of the birds? Are the birds? Do you have a bird on your shoulder?
I'm painting while we're talking. That's part of it. Interviews. Phone, requests. I have a bunch of people that I work with me, and we have constant dialoguing about what has to be done. And I listen to music often. I've been listening to Ray Charles a lot this week. I love Billie Holiday. I love exotic music, classical. I have a friend who's Bulgarian who lives near me upstate, who has a classical training, and she was supposed to have a thing at Carnegie Hall, but she has an incredible virtuoso recording that I listen to quite often. I love all of that. And I like other things too. But sometimes I have music and sometimes I don't. During COVID, I seem to want silence. But I used to listen to music constantly. Just a background thing and a mood thing. Sometimes, you have to change the energy with sound. So I get here every morning and I start painting. I'm working on three things while we're talking.
All right. So, what can you describe those three things to us?
Well, they had to be set up yesterday. They're colors with a metallic paint over them that we mix. And then I'm doing a series of pieces that I call Ascension. They're butterflies. And then they're cross-hatched. And each mark I make by hand. It takes a long time. And I usually start out, although not today, I'll do it later, a series of the bunny paintings to line them up. Doing a lot with diamond dust with those right now. And then I tackle larger things. I have a lot of commissions all the time, which is a blessing and a curse. I have to work on several today or start them. But I work wet into wet, so I have to be very disciplined with deadlines of drying and making sure it's just enough dry and wet to allow me to do what I have to do with the mark making and so on. And then, the surprise elements come through my work. I'm doing a new book. I just did a book called The Bigger Picture with Stala, and Hunt Slonem interviewed me for part of it. And the next book is on my butterfly paintings. I've looked through 50 years of butterfly paintings. It just blew me away to look at it because it's all the same subject matter, but they're all different, and it's like a meditation almost. I equate what I do to saying mantras and the rosary and etc. It's just this thing that comes through me, and the changes that occur are not thought of. They just happen over time. It's kind of amazing and kind of feel directed by the universe.
Like when you go back and view 50 years of butterflies, like do you, like you say, you can see change. I imagine some of those
Well, it's like snowflakes.
Right. And I'm just wondering, like, can you see how things sort of changed and remember that was the year I went on a vacation to India, or that was the year I went here, and you can see how it changed the way you worked with color or the form?
Well, one of the biggest things that happened in my life was following. First of all, I almost never go on vacation. I used to go to India to go to an ashram and to have shows. But I came back from India and turned around and looked at my studio and looked at the cage. I used to have a 40-foot cage that was in sections. And I just picked up a brush and carved it to a point and started making cross-hatching over it. Then it sort of contemporized what I'm doing, referred it to all kinds of grids and other people's work. I thought that one of the smartest things that was ever written was my first review in the Times. Not that I've had millions, but oh God, I'm trying to think of it. Anyway, I was equated. My work was said that if Joseph Cornell painted, it would look like what I did, and I didn't get it quite at first. But he used all this mesh and birds and boxes. It's a completely brilliant comparison, which never even occurred to me, even though I love Cornell. Roberta Smith wrote that.
And if Roberta Smith loves your work, then you've been sainted, right? Let's talk about your houses. So you, like you said, you kind of gained inspiration from Picasso, buying chateaux.